I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The prayer this morning will be offered by the good delegate representing Montgomery County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, today I want to share a prayer that the chaplain of the United States House of Representatives gave recently. But first, let me share a bit about the chaplain. Margaret Grun Kibben began active duty in the United States Navy in 1986. A graduate of Goucher College, she went on to earn 3 postgraduate degrees in divinity and national security studies. Her Navy assignments included the U.S. Naval Academy here in Annapolis, as well as serving as command chaplain for the Combined Forces Command of Afghanistan and as fleet chaplain for the U.S. 3rd Fleet. She also deployed with the Marine Corps 2nd Force Service Support Group. She retired as a highly decorated Rear Admiral after more than 30 years of service before being elected by the U.S. House of Representatives on a bipartisan basis and sworn in to serve as the first female chaplain in its history on January 3rd, 2021. Last week, Chaplain Kibben offered the following prayer in the House of Representatives, for which I ask you to now join me in reflection. Show us your unfailing love, O Lord, and grant us your deliverance, for we find ourselves in times of turmoil and tension, disagreements and dissension. But if we can open our hearts to receive your life-changing mercy and experience your soul-penetrating grace, we will be redeemed from our own discord, restored to common purpose and mutual respect. Let us listen that we will hear what you speak. When you pronounce health in our afflictions, may we receive it. When you promise peace to your people, may we live it. When we walk to the right or to the left, may our ears hear your word behind us, saying, "This is the way, walk in it." The word of the Lord is alive and powerful, sharper than any two-edged sword. The voice of the Lord is over the waters. The glory of God is heard in the thunder over many waters. Lord, pierce our soul and spirit, our joints and marrow, and discern our thoughts and the intentions of our hearts. Then may we, in this place, hear and heed your word. It is on the foundation of this word we stand, and in the strength of your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. There being 132 members present, the House is now in session. The clerk will read the journal from the previous day.
Annapolis, Maryland, February the 10th, 2025.
Recognizing the Deputy Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the journal.
So ordered. Petitions, memorials, and other papers. Message from the Senate. Senate bills introduced in the House. Clerk will read the bills and committee assignments.
Senate Bill 62, Senator Lewis Young. Appropriations, Senate Bill 123, Senator Simon Ayer. Judiciary, Senate Bill 204, Chair, Budget and Taxation Committee. Ways and Means, Senate Bill 295, Senator McCray. Ways and Means, Senate Bill 359, Senator King. Ways and Means and Appropriations.
Report of the Committee on Appropriations, report number 2. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 207, Higher Education, Undocumented Students, Out-of-State Tuition Exemption Eligibility, favorable.
A question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 538, Department of Human Services, Federal Commodity Supplemental Food Program Administration, favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Economic Matters, report number 1. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 63, State Board of Public Accountancy, Sunset Extension and Report, favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 78, State Commission of Real Estate Appraisers, Appraisal Management Companies, and Home Inspectors, Sunset Extension and Report, favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Next bill.
House Bill 92, Heating, Ventilation, Air Conditioning, and Refrigeration Contractors License Restoration, favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 194, Consumer Protection, Retail Sales, Reimbursement of Shipping Costs, favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Madam
Aye.
Speaker.
Yes. Young lady from Baltimore County.
Thank you. Would the floor leader rise, please?
Floor leader.
Good morning. Right in front of you.
Oh, sorry. Good morning. How are you?
I'm good, and yourself?
Good. Can you tell us what this does?
Sure. The intent of this bill is that if any consumer receives a item that was incorrectly shipped by the merchant, meaning it wasn't what they ordered, to return that item, they would be reimbursed the shipping cost.
And so if someone orders something, I understand that they got the wrong thing, we are saying that the retailer must reimburse shipping costs. Right now, there's a bill or a measure being considered to apply a shipping fee to consumers. Would fees or taxes have to be reimbursed to the consumer?
I think that was an item that was mentioned in our deliberation of this, and so that was something I think we said would have to be referred to the comptroller, and how they handle any other type of returns or tax returns.
Sure. Well,
So typically I understand that what they checked on was that if taxes were included, they would be refunded.
and how about the fee?
The fee is what this bill is saying. That
I'm sorry, let
Yeah.
me clarify that.
Yeah.
The 75-cent delivery fee, that would potentially be collected another way.
Well, that isn't in law yet, so we wouldn't know that, but we would have to determine that once that's in law. That is not in law. That's a proposal that I think you're referring to with the governor's budget, but that's not in law, so we don't know what would be the impact of that until it's done.
I would request a special order of this until tomorrow so I can do a little bit of homework on the bill, please.
You want to check with the governor?
Sure. I can ask him whether he thinks he's going to get that shipping tax delivered or not.
We'd all
Thank
like
you.
the answer to that too. Thank you.
All right.
Yes. Gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Can the floor leader rise once again for a quick question?
Floor
What-
leader.
What? Okay. Thank you.
Excuse me. I didn't hear what he said. The question before the House is the Special Order House Bill 194. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. House Bill 194 has been special ordered until the appropriate time tomorrow. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 227, Corporations and Associations, Electric Cooperatives, non-sheet capital credits favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. The report of the Committee on Economic Matters, report number 2. Clerk will read the first one.
House Bill 239, Charitable Organizations, Late Fees and Registration, Suspension and Cancellation Requirements. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered reading the amendments.
So ordered.
The amendment makes clarifying change to the language of the bill. Please move the amendment.
Question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 270, Data Center Impact Analysis and Report. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing Vice Chair of the Committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 requires the assessment done by the Maryland School of Business to be done in conjunction with industry experts. Please move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is
Madam Speaker. Sorry.
The question now, the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title?
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman, where are you from Baltimore County.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I jumped the gun there. Would the floor leader please rise?
Madam Speaker.
Good morning. Just a couple questions. Could you just tell me what the bill does exactly?
It's a study, but essentially it looks at the impact of data centers if they were built in the state of Maryland. So it's going to take a look at what is the grid impact, what are the economic impact, and what is the environmental impact from a neutral standpoint. So it should highlight both the positives and potential negatives from a neutral standpoint.
How would this look at the situation that's proposed for Virginia? Through my district now is potentially a very long extension cord to connect to a data center there. How would it look at that, and how would it work with that potentially?
Yeah, that would be what the PSC would consider when looking at the grid impact. In fact, that is specifically what we would be looking at. How much draw does a data center have? And then, okay, if it draws X amount of energy, what does that look like as an impact to all of our districts in the state?
Okay. Is there any fiscal note to the bill?
Yes, there is. It is, I believe, $502,000. Correct. Yeah, it's $502,000 for the study.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Baltimore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would it be okay if I special ordered this bill until tomorrow for the purpose of an amendment, please?
Madam Speaker, no issue.
Question before the House is to special order House Bill 270. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? House Bill 270 has been special ordered until the appropriate time tomorrow. Are there any additional? Yep. Report of the Committee on Environment and Transportation, report number 1. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 4, restrictions on use, solar collector systems alterations, favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 7, vehicle laws, bicycles, operation at intersections, favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 40, natural resources, fishing licenses and stamps alterations, favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Recognizing the minority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If the floor leader could rise just for a couple of questions about this bill. Thank you. It's nice to see you, my friend. The fiscal note seems to reveal, is this a, now.
I was
seems
nice.
to reveal that this is a $3 million fee increase for fishers. Is that correct?
The bill alters the fee because, as DNR states in the fiscal note and in their testimony, is that the fees do not allow them to operate their fisheries and management. And so if you saw the fiscal note, by 2026, 2027, they're at about a little over $600,000 for their budget, so it's depleting it versus by about a $3 million budget that they have now. So these fees help bring them back up so that they can manage these programs.
Right, and the total estimated value of the new fees, if you vote for this, you're voting for $3 million in aggregate and additional fees. That's what the estimate is the total
The current
increase in
fees didn't keep up with inflation, and so it has depleted the fund. The current fees allows it to bring them back up so that they can manage programs.
And that's what I found really interesting. Exhibit 2 of the fiscal note, when you say that DNR says, well, gee, we can't pay for this anymore. DNR's administrative costs in fiscal year 2024, last year, were $251,000. Their projections for next year for their administrative costs is $1.8 million. So their administrative costs have gone up over $1.5 million in 2 years at the time that I was in this room with everybody else and I was told we have a budget crisis, we can't hire more people, we can't do stuff. But the administrative expenses that DNR is allocating to managing, not the costs for the fishing and boating services expenditures, not the cost for stocking fish, their administrative expenditures, which the fiscal note says, here's what that involves. Office of the Attorney General, legal representation, advice and counsel, finance and administrative services, human resources, information technology services, communications, licensing and registration, so that's a human being, I assume, to publish that, and the natural resources police.
People have to run the programs.
Right.
And the programs need to be run. So without this increase, one or two things are going to happen. We can dramatically cut programming for that something isn't in demand, or we can eliminate the programs altogether.
Did anyone ask?
You have an amendment?
Did anyone ask how the administrative costs, the things I just read, quadrupled, more than quadrupled in 2 years? How the administrative costs in 2024 were $250,000 for all of those things, the Office of the Attorney General and the licensing staff and all those things, and 2 years later they're $1.8 million. That's an enormous rate of growth for administrative costs, not for fishing and stocking and fixing boats, going out into the waters and doing things. This is just the admin people.
That's the cost. That's the cost to run the programs. It's the cost of inflation, right? Somebody has to run the programs. The fees haven't been increased since 2007 and 1992, respectively. So, again, I want to point out that a work group came together of this community and put this and agreed to these costs, one. Two, we were the lowest costs in the region, so we are now averaging the costs of the region. And lastly, I would say that this bill was favorable by all of the fishing communities, Mid-Atlantic Trout Unlimited Council, Cold Water Fisheries Advisory Committee, Maryland Bass Nation, and the Congressional Sportsman Foundation.
Okay, did they ask the question of why did the administrative costs more than quadruple in 2 years? And that's the only question I'm really trying to get at. And if we don't have a direct answer, I get it. But at a time when we talk about, hey, we're not hiring more employees, we're not adding all these costs, $250,000 to $1.8 million, and then the solution is we're going to come in and have a $3 million fee increase on the community. So it's fine. The community agrees in it. You know, fishers say, hey, I'll pay an extra $5, $10, $20. I want to go fishing. I don't think I would pay all that money. I'm not that good of a fisherman. But they were happy to do that in their individual circumstances. But when you look at it in the aggregate, $3 million in a fee increase for a program whose administrative expenses has more than quadrupled in 2 years. And that's my question. Like, when you say inflation, what's the inflation for the person who works at the Office of Attorney General and advises the program? Were there more people hired? There has to be something to explain $250,000 to $1.8 million in 2 years.
So this goes back to, again, when you've been managing a program on the same fees since 2007 and 1992, costs go up, inflation go up, cost to manage go up. And so one or two things that can happen is that the programs are eliminated altogether, or they're cut dramatically. And the fishing community have all agreed to this because it was worked out and managed through them. So they are agreeing that they're willing to pay this fee. They are agreeing that these fisheries and hatcheries management is important, and they agree to it.
Okay.
And it is on average.
I can't agree to a $3 million fee increase to pay people who apparently were working in the program 2 years ago, but now their expenses have gone through the roof. But I do appreciate that it was a product of discussions and work and whatever it was. It wasn't just something pulled out of the air.
Yes,
but I
sir.
really would like to get a better picture of how it is that the Department of Natural Resources said we could do all these things for $250,000 2 years ago, but now we need $1.8 million to pay the same people, presumably.
I'm happy
do the
to
same
ask
things.
them to send you that analysis.
Yep, thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, first, I just want to start off by saying that these clubs, and they do, most of whom the members of these clubs, they make money doing this, by the way, in tournaments and fishing tournaments. So they're more than happy to pay more money to potentially make more money. And I can tell you that these clubs, at least from the perspective of my family, my friends, and the people who I represent over 4 counties, where it's a livelihood to fish, these clubs don't speak for them. So the question that I have for the floor leader is to them. I mean, what do I go back and tell those folks who are going to pay more for their fishing licenses? What do we tell them? What are you getting in return for that specifically? I mean, we talk about inflation. We talk about the bureaucracy of the DNR. When I go back, I can't explain that to them. They don't care about the bureaucracy of the DNR. And if we say, well, we're going to have cuts to services, what are we going to, like, not let them fish anymore if they don't pay more for their fishing licenses? I mean, I don't really understand what you mean by that.
Floor leader.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Delegate. I mean, this goes back to program management. You get the tournaments, you get the stocking, and you'll have, these folks will actually have something to pick from.
The vast majority of people who fish in Maryland are not members of these clubs, though. They don't benefit from stocking these ponds. They benefit by going to their local lake, or they go to the local river.
Which are stocked.
They're not stocked. They're not stocked.
These
The
here.
vast majority of ponds and lakes and rivers in the state of Maryland are not stocked with fish. They're not. That is not true. They are in Western Maryland for trout, and they stay alive for like 2 months, then they die because of the hot weather. But the vast majority of our lakes, rivers, and ponds in Maryland are not stocked.
So what I will say is that we are now on par, on average, with the surrounding states, especially Virginia, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, 1. 2, and asked and answered, as I mentioned to the minority leader, 1 or 2 things can happen. The department can decide to keep the fees as is and do 1 or 2 things. Eliminate the programs altogether and have no licenses because they cannot pay for the program and they cannot manage it, or cut it dramatically, which would go against the constituencies that want these programs.
So there's not enough money in the DNR budget to be able to make sure that people have fishing licenses?
No, the
That's hard
fees
to
have
believe.
not been increased in 20 years. So no. So, I mean, the question should be is, can any of us live on the same salary without a COLA for 20 years as inflation rises and as the cost to do business rises? That's the question, Delegate.
And I can't honestly go back home to my constituents and say that if you don't pay more in your fishing license, that we're not going to be able to let you fish in the Chop Tank River anymore. I can't do that. I can't, in good faith, actually say that. My next 2 questions for you: is there a difference now in your committee's posture in regards to taxation? Because you were comparing us to other states where they're higher than we are, so we want
Well, I
parity
would argue
there.
this is not a tax because we all don't pay, so it's not a tax. This is a choice of a fee to participate in recreational activities. So it is not a tax, so I would like to correct you on that.
All right, normally I'm okay with a fee for service. All right, going back to my previous question about the posture of your committee on fees for service. WMATA, for example, we've been bailing them out by hundreds of millions of dollars over the last decade, and the users pay a fee. Now, we've been trying to lower their fees. We
Respectfully,
we eliminated, hold on for a second, let me finish my line of question, please. We've eliminated fare box recovery, right? So those users don't have to pay those fees anymore. So from your committee's perspective, what's the difference here between transit and fishing?
Well, I can't speak to transit, but what I can speak to is this bill, in that these funds go into a special fund to manage these programs. Exactly. I mean, yes, the difference is we don't give subsidies for fishing. So the prices paid goes into the special fund. The special fund manages the programs.
I can tell you why we don't do exactly that is because the vast majority of Marylanders live in like 4 counties, and it's easy to tax somebody who lives in a population less than $500,000 over 9 counties. That's
It's not a tax.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker. Gentleman from Montgomery County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The gentleman from Eastern Shore was playing my song, so I had to get up. I just want to clarify something that the gentleman from the Eastern Shore knows, but for the minority leader's benefit. For years, the general fund and other special funds have been cross-subsidizing different programs around the state, and that's put a lot of pressure on the general fund in particular, which frankly is part of why we're facing a budget deficit. So the work we've been doing last year and this year, which I know gives you all great pleasure to deal with on the House floor, is to frankly right-size some of these fees to help ease the pressure on the general fund. And I will just say, since I know you want to talk about this, if there was a reasonable fee that you could put on WMATA users, like a fare, to help pay for the costs, we would do that. And in fact, we do it. WMATA users do pay fare, so do MTA users. In the case of WMATA, they had a 12.5% fare increase just last year. So when we can do reasonable fare increases to help pay for programs, that's something we do. In the case of these fee increases, a lot of them are on non-residents. Now, I know we want non-residents to come here and use our services, but since our non-resident fees are so much lower than other states' non-resident fees, it makes sense to do a little bit of right-sizing here and help cover the cost of these programs and ease your work in the Appropriations Committee coming up with a balanced general fund. And for that reason, I'd ask my colleagues to allow this bill to move on to third reader unless someone has an actual amendment, in which case we can take that up. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Okay.
Madam Speaker.
All right.
Could the floor leader please rise?
Gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good morning.
Good morning.
So specifically, how will this affect seniors?
How would it affect them?
Yeah.
So their fee goes from $5 to $12 for their consolidated license fees.
Do seniors, are they currently required to have a trout stamp?
Currently, yes, but it has been removed and no.
No, but now they would have to buy a trout stamp?
That's
is that
correct.
And
Because, go ahead.
how much is a trout stamp?
The trout stamp is 20 for a resident, 30 for a non-resident.
So we're going from $5 to potentially $32 for a senior citizen.
So, right, so it'd be 12 plus 20, yes.
Great.
For
thank
the
you.
year.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Southern Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the committee chairman please rise?
Chair of the committee.
Hey, good morning.
Morning.
You said something during that exchange there that really kind of caught my ear a little bit. So basically, the way I understand this bill is the fee has to go up because it hasn't been risen in like 20 years. And the money...
That's actually not what I said.
Okay. Well, I mean, maybe that was something the subcommittee chairman said, or the vice chair, I guess. I guess what you're saying is that the fee has to go up because money was being taken out of the general fund to subsidize the program, and the fee wasn't high enough. Therefore, we're going to create a special fund? Is that the synopsis?
No, that's not what I said.
Okay, go ahead and enlighten me on that.
Sure. What I said was, we've had fees funding these special funds for a very long time, probably centuries, to be honest with you, but I actually don't know the exact date that these particular fees were created. Those fees used to entirely pay for programs, but over time, because the fees weren't raised, more and more of the programs are paid for by the general fund. So one of the things we've been doing the last 2 years, actually, we asked the departments in the budget 3 years ago to submit proposals to do this, is seeing how some of these fees can be adjusted to cover more of the cost through a fee-based system as opposed to just general fund subsidy. In a lot of the cases of the fees we've been increasing, they probably still won't cover the whole cost of the programs, but they can do a little bit more to help cover the cost and ease some of the pressure on the general fund.
Okay, I understand that portion. So when the budget comes up this year, are we saying there won't be any special funds rated and taken back over to the general fund?
I guess I'd have to defer to someone on the Appropriations Committee.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for indulging our questions on this bill.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
All right, saying that. Are there any further amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 127, Department of Housing and Community Development, Maryland Housing Rehabilitation Program, Local Rehabilitation Program Administration, favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 191, Vehicle Laws, Towed, Removed, or Abandoned Vehicles, Electronic Notice to Owner, favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered for printed for third reading. Clerk, read next.
House Bill 273, Residential Leases, Late Payment Penalties, Calculation, favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. I don't know who got it first. Where are you from? Eastern Shore. Gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the floor leader rise for a couple questions?
Floor leader.
Good morning.
Good morning, my friend. How are you?
I am wonderful, and yourself, sir?
A new year, a new set of bills for real property. So we've got a bill here that I agree with, and I certainly would be willing to support it. The question I have for you is that in courts where a landlord goes to court and goes to a rent collection effort, we're allowed to basically get the courts to award us late fees. And quite often what I'm seeing are the courts are actually striking late fees. So think about it like this. You have a $1,000 a month rent. The tenant's not paying the rent. You're charging a 5% late fee, which is like $50. What the courts are doing is awarding the $1,000 to the landlord, but they're striking the late fees. So my question to you is, do we as a legislature agree with the principle of allowing landlords to charge late fees?
What this bill does, in fact, put a 5% late fee onto the rent. So that's what we're doing with this legislation.
On just unpaid fees, and I appreciate that. We discussed this. it becomes part of legislative intent. I think courts should be awarding late fees unless there's some good reason not to do that. The reason why I bring it up is under the bill, later they talk about the subtitle and they give, it appears, tenants the ability to recover damages if there's an error made as it relates to the this late fee being charged for other than unpaid balances. And it looks like the tenant is actually able to include reasonable attorney's fees. So my only real question here is, do we agree in principle that late fees can and should be charged by tenants? And your answer is that the bill's actually here to discuss that. I'm just asking, do you think that we should be encouraging our courts to enforce that?
And now I understand your question. What you're discussing is something that's way beyond the scope of this particular piece of legislation. This particular legislation is relevant to rent only. And rent over the years have become a defined definition because of the costs that we have been incurring in all kinds of other scenarios. Rent now is a defined definition, and this bill allows a 5% late fee on rent only.
Would you be against an amendment that maybe it's uncodified language, maybe we actually discuss this in an amendment, but we speak to the idea that if a landlord is charging late fees correctly under this bill, should it pass, that the courts actually enforce what this is doing and allow the landlords to actually receive the late fees in a judgment in court?
So you're asking me if I would accept your amendment. Is that what you're asking me?
Would you consider it? Because I'll special order it if you'll consider it.
Unless I see it in writing, I can't really specify whether I would or would not, sir.
All right, I'll do it real quickly. And Madam Speaker, could I special order the bill to the appropriate time tomorrow?
Madam Speaker.
Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The committee has no problem special ordering the bill. We consider every amendment that's offered on the floor through the normal process. I think asking subcommittee chairs or floor leaders if they would support hypothetical amendments, though, is probably not the best practice, but happy to accept the special order so we can consider your amendment in due course.
Well, and I appreciate that, Madam Speaker.
Well, I was about to do it, but if you want to continue to talk, go ahead.
It was a likely outcome that I would not special order the bill because I do believe that having this discussion is part of the legislative intent that the courts should consider as they're talking about this. So frankly, part of what I'm doing here is just having this back and forth. The special order would primarily be a bill to have uncodified language, to have some discussion. If we're going to, in the uncodified language, talk about tenants being able to get attorney's fees, then we should also be talking about what landlords can get if they get a judgment in court. That's the purpose of the discussion. So it's really, I'll special order the bill. I think it's, and I'll do it for the right reasons, and I'll consider how that was brought up in future back and forths.
Okay. The question before the House is to special order House Bill 273. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. House Bill 273 has been special ordered until the appropriate time tomorrow. Report of the Committee on Health and Government Operations, report number 3. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 3, State Board of Physical Therapy Examiners, revisions, favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Ways and Means, report number 1. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 41, Election Law, petitions for the formation of a new political party process, favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 153, Election Law, Voter Registration, Age and Notification to Minors, favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 161, Primary and Secondary Education Comprehensive Health Education Framework, established. Favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title?
Madam Speaker.
Yes. Gentlelady from Carroll.
Yes, could the floor leader rise for a few questions? Good morning.
Good morning.
Is this bill in the exact posture as the bill we discussed at length last year?
Correct. It is the same bill that passed third reader last session.
Okay. So it's basically two parts to the bill. Will this take away any of the first part of the bill, which is the choice of parents to opt out of the framework?
Parents are permitted under the legislation to opt out of the family life portion or the human gender identity and sexuality portion.
Okay. In doing a little bit of research, are you aware what percentage of our parents in Carroll County, I know this is the Carroll County bill, this is Carroll County is an awful bill. Do you know what the percentage is of parents that actually opted out in elementary school?
So we did do a little bit of research, and Carroll County sex education curriculum does exclude gender identity in their family life portion under the health curriculum, which they are supposed to teach. And so Carroll County actually gives 3 options, which they are not supposed to do. They have the Maryland State option, which is the full curriculum. They have their own curriculum that they have passed, the Carroll County curriculum, I'll call it, and then they have just a full opt-out. And so the data that we found shows that 42% of parents chose the Carroll County curriculum, 35% opted for the statewide framework, and 8% opted out of both. And then 15% of parents just did not respond. And so that's not specifically for elementary school, that's just for all the schools in total.
Okay, because actually that is specific to elementary. So the total in elementary school, 50% of the parents chose the state curriculum or they just didn't respond. So, as my friend, the former delegate Sue Krebs would always say, what problem is it that we're trying to solve? So if half the parents in elementary school actually went with the state curriculum, middle school, 59% went with the state curriculum. At high school, it went up to 65%. So I find it hard to believe that this is such a huge problem that we again are coming back to Carroll County, singling us out and not allowing us the local control and our parents into how we want our kids educated.
So I'm not sure, I will respond to that. It's not necessarily a question.
Not a question.
But Carroll County is not being singled out. This is a statewide bill, and it's in response to Carroll County not following the statewide health curriculum that they are supposed to follow, quite frankly. And the purpose of the curriculum is to make sure that all of our children, regardless of their race, ethnicity, religious background, their sexual identity, we want all of our children to feel welcome in the schools. And we've heard in the Ways and Means Committee that that is not the case in Carroll County. And as far as local control, the legislation specifically states that in developing the curriculum, the educators, health experts, and members of the local community are supposed to come up with the curriculum. So there is local control there and local input by the parents and families in that community.
So is it not fair to say, though, that Carroll County does have a family life advisory board and it does have the makeup of the folks that you're discussing, health experts, a parent, the committee itself, and a school board member. I think it's 31 people, I don't have that number right in front of me, that met to come up with this alternative plan. So are you saying that this alternative plan is going to be taken away under this bill?
What I'm saying is that
in accordance with what I just read, they will have to come up with a new plan since they're not following, Carroll County is not following what they're supposed to follow under the health guidelines that they agreed to follow under the state board. So under this new plan legislation, yes, they will have to come up with a new curriculum to include certain topics that are listed here in the legislation.
Okay, is this the same issue that Montgomery County is currently going before the Supreme Court because parents wanted the right to opt out for this type of instruction for their students?
I do not believe that it's the same issue.
Okay, because that's my understanding and from my reading of my research, that this particular issue, that a group of parents have filed suit and that it's currently going before the Supreme Court.
Yeah, it's not the same issue.
Okay, may I special order this bill for purpose of a possible amendment tomorrow at the appropriate time?
At the appropriate time tomorrow, yes, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Question before the House. This is Special Order HB 161. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. House Bill 161 has been special ordered until the appropriate time tomorrow. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 184, non-public schools, transcripts, prohibition on punitive measures related to student debt, favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 199, election law, notice to permanent absentee voters, favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Environment and Transportation, report number 2. The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 9, Public Safety, Food System Resiliency Council, definitions and reports, favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As amended, the bill alters existing responsibilities of the Food System Resiliency Council and repeals outdated one-time reporting requirements under the bill. Under the bill, the council must develop equity and sustainability policy recommendations to increase the long-term resiliency of the food system that, 1, addresses and eliminates limited food options and food scarcity that exists in healthy food priority areas rather than food deserts as specified under the current law, and 2, reduces wasted food rather than the current statutory reference to food waste. Amendment number 1 adds co-sponsors. Amendment number 2 strikes language that would have required the council to periodically update a certain plan and instead extends the types of policy recommendations that must be pursued by the council to include recommendations that address the production and procurement of local food. Move the amendments, please.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 25, Environment Reservoir Augmentation Permit Establishment, favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 corrects references and adds reporting requirements. Move the amendments, Madam Speaker.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker.
The amendment has been adopted. Yep. Yeah, I was about to say that, but let me finish what I have to say first, and you can get.
Sorry, I didn't want you to miss me.
I don't think I can miss you.
Thank you. I would miss you.
The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Gentlelady representing Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would the floor leader rise, please?
Or later.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I was reading the fiscal note, and the fiscal note seems to say that there is one particular project that this whole program is being set up for, and that's in Carroll County.
No, there was a pilot program authorized back in 2023 in Westminster. So based on the success of that pilot program, through this bill, any jurisdiction that would seek to have something similar for their jurisdiction could apply for authorization to do the same thing for their jurisdiction.
The permit fee for this program, although, obviously water is key, and it seems like the program is trying to find some new sources of water reuse or ways to do that. But the fee is $75,000. Seems very steep.
I couldn't comment as to the rationale for that specific amount, but to gather all the application information to do the necessary permitting does require, I'm sure, not insignificant expenses.
And it says MDE receives one permit application at the end of 2030. So we're setting up a program, but we aren't going to have any applications for 5 years, and then that fee is going to be $75,000. It seems like maybe putting the cart before the horse. Why are we jumping into this right now?
It's in the event that, water scarcity is not a general problem in the state, but there are some jurisdictions like Westminster where they found that being able to use reclaimed water as potable water was beneficial. So in the event that another jurisdiction decides that, yes, given the availability of drinking water, that this is something they'd like to pursue, MDE wanted to set up the regulatory process to allow that.
Which seems laudable. I'm concerned that the department is setting this fee so high, $75,000, that it's not encouraging people to do what it seems like the department and the committee would like to see more jurisdictions do.
Yeah, again, I can't comment as to the specifics that went into their cost calculation leading to that fee. But again, there is, I'm sure, a fair amount of work that MDE has to do in this permitting and oversight process.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Speaker.
Yes, gentlelady from Carroll.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. For the floor leader, just to clarify, when Westminster did this, was it not a big part of the argument for us to do it because of our scarcity of water and the fact that we were not able to grow, we weren't able to add additional housing, and because of that, the stagnation of the growth in our town has been a financial problem, and certainly needing that water would be worth the $75,000. Would that be fair to say?
Delegate, I believe so, yes.
And does this this is just enabling legislation, it's not requiring any particular jurisdiction to do so?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 124, Residential Property Assignment of Contracts and Sale, Disclosure Requirements, and Rescission. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 makes technical changes and adds co-sponsors. Amendment number 2 alters terminology to conform to existing practice. And the bill Also, the bill authorizes a disclosure requires a wholesale buyer to disclose to the owner of the property that the wholesale buyer may assign the contract of sale to another person. And number 2 requires a wholesale seller to disclose to prospective assignee that the wholesale seller may not be able to convey title. Move the bill as amended, Madam Speaker.
Question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third read. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 338, State Buildings and State Highways, Collection and Disposal of Yard Waste. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 conditions the requirement that the yard waste be disposed of at various facilities in the state on whether there is a nearby facility with capacity to take the yard waste. Move the amendments, Madam Speaker.
Question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title?
Madam Speaker,
yes.
if I could ask the floor leader a question on the bill, I appreciate it.
Sure.
I'm from Western Maryland and floor leader.
So back here,
Right.
the back row. So the way I understand it, you're enforcing yard waste and where it's taken, correct? So the amendment, I believe, if it's more than 30 miles, you don't have to take it to a facility in this
That's correct.
non-recyclable container. So are there penalties associated with this?
No penalties.
So no one would enforce the 30-mile rule?
It would be responsibility of state government to different Department of General Services or state highways to make sure that this bill is implemented if it passed, but otherwise there are no penalties for it.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Health and Government Operations, report number 4. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 158, Department of Aging Social Connections Program Establishment. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 alters the name of the program to be the Senior Call, Check, and Social Connections Program, redefines eligible participants as residents of the state who are at least 60, strikes language specifying the types of communication and notification required by the program, and retains current language regarding funding. Move the amendments.
Question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Question now to adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 256, Health Occupations Boards, Membership Alteration and Sunset Extensions. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
The amendment reduces the amount of time the Board of Professional Counselor and Therapists is extended from 5 to 2 years. Move the amendment, Madam Speaker.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 321, Pharmacy Benefits Managers, Definition of Purchaser and Alteration of Application of Law. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the sponsor of the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Amendment number 1 adds sponsors and makes technical changes. Moves so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
1 is amendment for sponsors, and the second requires the Maryland Insurance Administration to convene a work group to review and make recommendations on certain provisions of law regarding pharmacy benefit managers, specialty pharmacies, and anti-steering. Move the amendments. Thank you.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 345, Interstate Social Work Licensure Compact. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds sponsors. Amendment number 2 makes technical corrections for consistency with the interstate contract. Please move the amendments.
Question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. That ends the work at the desk. Committee announcements. Appropriations.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Appropriations Committee will have bill hearings at 1 o'clock.
Judiciary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House Judiciary Committee will have bill hearings starting at 1 o'clock.
Environment and Transportation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The House Environment and Transportation Committee will have bill hearings at 1 o'clock.
Ways and Means.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Ways and Means Committee will meet at 1 p.m. for bill hearings.
Economic Matters.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. House Economic Matters Committee will meeting at 1 p.m. for bill hearings.
Health and Government Operations.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Health and Government Operations Committee will have bill hearings at 1 o'clock. Thank you.
Are there any subcommittee announcements? Subcommittee announcements. Excuse me? Wait. Gentleman lady from Baltimore City.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Natural Resources Subcommittee will meet at 3 p.m. or immediately after Environment and Transportation hearings this afternoon. Thank you.
Any other subcommittee? Gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Education Subcommittee will meet at noon online.
Gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Public Safety Subcommittee of the Baltimore County Delegation will meet after session for just a few minutes.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Insurance and Pharmaceutical Subcommittee will be meeting at 11:30 on Zoom.
Okay. Gentleman lady from Ann Arbor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Public Health and Minority Health Disparities Subcommittee will be meeting at 11:30 on Zoom.
Okay. Gentleman lady from Baltimore City.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Land Use and Ethics Subcommittee of Environment and Transportation will meet today after Natural Resources, which will be around 4 p.m. Please watch your texts and emails for updated meeting time. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Okay. Any other subcommittee announcements? No? Any delegation announcements? I don't know who got up first. Gentleman from Howard.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Howard County House Delegation will have a meeting tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock on Zoom.
Gentleman lady from Prince George's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Prince George's County Affairs Committee will meet tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. via Zoom, and the Law Enforcement Committee will meet at 9 a.m. via Zoom. Thank you.
Any other subcommittee announcements? I don't see any delegation? Any more delegation announcements? Okay. Caucus announcements. Who got up first? Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Veterans Caucus will meet tomorrow morning virtually at 08. Look for the link in your email. Again, that's tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., 08 military time, virtually. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Okay. Anybody else? Prince George's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, the Latino Caucus will have our next installment of Cafe Con Amigo at 8:45 a.m. via Zoom. Please be on time. We can't wait to see you. Thank you.
Okay. Gentleman from Montgomery.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. An announcement for the Jewish Caucus members tomorrow morning, again, is our breakfast at 8 a.m. with the governor, and it is still on. Thank you.
This it? Okay. Black History Moment, recognizing young lady from Prince George's County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today we celebrate. We celebrate Africans and African Americans and labor for tireless work and involuntary and laborious contributions to the building of this nation's and this state's infrastructure. We celebrate those whose uncompensated labor has often been buried by a refusal to acknowledge valuable contributions and an unwillingness to acknowledge and provide recompense. Our nation's infrastructure, through the knowledge and specialized skills of people of African descent, despite being determined illiterate, richly benefited those who enslaved them. Through work in agriculture, mining, piloting of fishing boats, printing presses, dairy farms, and countless other skills brought to this country from their homelands. We celebrate the labor of those who provided us essential inventions, such as the traffic light by Garrett Morgan, automatic elevator doors by Alexander Miles, the blood banking system by Dr. Charles Drew, who subsequently died after being denied blood through the system he created following a car accident. We celebrate the invention of the refrigerated truck with a roof-mounted cooling system by Frederick McKinley Jones, the clothes dryer by George Sampson, hair care products by Madam C.J. Walker, the laser cataract removal surgery probe by Patricia Bath, potato chips by George Crumb, the automatic gear shift by Richard Spikes, the folding cabinet bed by Sarah Good, the multiplex telegraph for trains by Granville T. Woods, and countless other inventions from the labor of Africans and African American laborers. We celebrate the labor of Africans and African Americans whose music, cuisine, dialect, art, and tireless work in social justice crusades contributed to our rich American culture, all rooted in African customs. Today, we celebrate people who came in voluntarily, oppressed and denied the dignity of their value and self-worth, declared private property, who taught and trained and created patents for which they were never credited because their status declared them ineligible to receive credit for their own creations. We celebrate people who advanced from inconceivable treatment and subjections, overcoming the odds and continuing in their notable labor. We celebrate Africans and African Americans who continue to shape Maryland's history from the colony's founding in 1634 to today in 2025. We celebrate the historical and present labor that has fueled Maryland's economic growth and placed us in a position of national prominence. Today, we celebrate those who labored in Annapolis, shaping the history of the state's capital, Africans and African Americans like Lucy Smith, who rented stall number 9 for 7 years in the Annapolis Market House and operated Aunt Lucy's Bake Shop near the corner of Main and Green Streets. And her son, John Smith Jr., and other African-American entrepreneurs, including William Bishop and Moses Lake, who owned and operated businesses in downtown Annapolis. We celebrate John T. Maynard, who worked as a waiter and ran an Annapolis boarding house, who bought the land at 163 Duke of Gloucester Street and ran it as a boarding house until 1915, when Willis Burgess, an African-American tenant, purchased it at auction. It ran in his family until 1990 and is now known as the Maryland Burgess House. Today we celebrate the labor of African-Americans who fiercely ran for office, like William H. Butler, born into slavery, later becoming Maryland's first African-American elected city council member. We celebrate the labor of Africans and African Americans who have graced this state house, fighting for liberty and justice for all. Africans and African Americans whose labor continues to contribute to the establishment of laws in this great state, including those who are sitting amongst us right now, in this very room, built by our ancestors but not enjoyed by them. We celebrate the labor of our current leaders, including the Speaker of this House, Adrian Jones, the labor of our Governor, Wes Moore, the labor of our former first African-American Treasurer, Richard Dixon, and our current Treasurer, Derek Davis, and our first Black Attorney General, Anthony Brown. We celebrate those whose labor for liberty and justice for all boldly grace these halls in the name of justice, like abolitionist Frederick Douglass, and a woman whose blood runs through my veins, as I am proudly the fifth-generation great-niece of Harriet Tubman. We celebrate my African-American colleagues in this room who are running for our lives to make this state and this nation a better place for our children, for your children, and our children's children. Today, we celebrate.
Nicely done. Are there any personal or guest announcements? Gentleman from Carroll.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm not sure if they're still here or not, but we're going to all pretend like they're here. We got some folks from Carroll County down here today, along with the Chamber of Commerce. Our class, I guess 2025 class of Leadership Carroll. So if they're here, let's give them a round of applause. If not, we're doing it anyways. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Gentlelady from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, this morning I rise one of my favorite days of sessions. It is Maryland Library Day. Maryland libraries provide a host of resources and services that go far beyond books. Their innovative services and broad-based community supports help constituents in every corner of our state, from providing internet services to gun locks, and of course providing space for communities to congregate, read, learn, and grow. In the gallery, there is or was a wonderful group from the Maryland Library Association. Will the body please help me welcome them?
Any other personal guests? Gentlelady Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. I would like you to please welcome an amazing young man who is doing his master's at Johns Hopkins with a health policy fellow. He's also a doctor from Nigeria, and his name is Emmanuel Anima Shawn, and he's with me until April. Please give him a warm welcome.
See no other personal or guest announcements? Gentlelady from Prince George's.
Madam Speaker, help me welcome the mayor, staff, and council of Coal Mine Manor Day. They're celebrating Coal Mine Manor Day in Annapolis, so welcome them.
Any other personal or guest announcements? Seeing none, quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their presence? Clerk will take the call. There being 131 members present, the House is still in session, recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House stands adjourned until Wednesday, February 12th at 10 a.m.